today I would like to share with you a very personal story of how I overcame the desire to live in a mansion. And I know a lot of you are into vision boards, and every year when you make your new vision board, you put a picture of a mansion and maybe a luxury car. So it's a huge house with a pool and a hot tub and all the riches and all the luxury you could dream of. And for a lot of people, the only time they have visited a mansion was when they went on a trip. Maybe they went on a trip to Georgia and they visited a plantation and the mansion there, or maybe they visited the governor's mansion somewhere else. But most people, they have not actually had the experience of physically going into a mansion. You see a lot of mansions on TV. It's super popular to make TV shows and movies about people who are super rich and live in mansions. But for most people, that's not part of your reality. And when I was a child, it was a part of my reality. I went to a school that was at the time the most exclusive, the most difficult school to get into in the whole country of Ecuador, where I was born and raised. I had the experience of visiting the homes of my friends who lived in mansions. And my parents built a house, a regular, good-sized house, in the most expensive neighborhood and the most exclusive neighborhood in town at the time. That was where all the diplomats lived, the richest people in the country, all the foreigners that were in business in the country, so the people with a lot of money. And my parents built this ordinary house, maybe about 3,000 square feet, in a neighborhood full of mansions. And I remember climbing onto the roof of my parents' house and looking around, and I remember longing for what I saw. So I would see beautiful yards to one side and beautiful views through the window of one of the mansions. The neighborhood was on a hill. And so when I was on the roof and I looked to the front of the house, I saw from above, a lot of the mansions from above. And when I looked to the back, I saw these buildings, these mansions rising into the mountain, into the hill. And so I would look at that and feel this longing for that kind of life that I imagined those people had who lived in those mansions. Now, did I really want to live in a mansion? I did not. I had been in the homes of friends who lived in mansions. And when I was in those homes, the thought never crossed my mind of, oh, I wish I lived here. Oh, I wish my house was like that. That's not something that came to my mind, because what I saw was homes that were so huge that the family was completely disconnected. Back in the day, way before cell phones, people have to have intercoms in all of the bedrooms and the living room and the dining room and the kitchen. And you had to push on the button and call your children through the intercom to come to dinner and things like that. And so I did not find that appealing. I'm a people person. And I didn't like the idea of having a house so large that when you were in your own apartment and your own suite with your own super large bedroom and your bathroom and your huge walk-in closet, that you can actually hear your parents on the other side of the house, or that you would actually be completely disconnected from the sounds of the kitchen or the dining room. So I had this experience of going into mansions, but I never pictured myself in a mansion. But when I was standing on my parents' roof, looking at the mansions around me, I was longing for something. And it was not the wealth, it was not the size, it was not the luxury of a mansion. It was what I can understand now with my feng shui eyes, because I have studied, I practice feng shui, and I teach people to become feng shui consultants. There's some things that I understood even at that age when I was a teenager, maybe 14, 15. I understood certain things. Even though I had never heard of feng shui, I had an inner knowing about feng shui. And now I can tell why I was feeling that way, and why when I was in the mansions of my friends, I never actually pictured myself in there. I never wanted to have that. Part of that is that the feng shui standard for happiness is the home that is smallish and full of happy people that you love. Not the mansion full of staff. So the feng shui standard of happiness is that smallish home, right? And so what I was longing for was a sense of normalcy, and what I saw as a need to live in a home with good feng shui, because I could look, there was a huge, beautiful house behind my parents' house, and I could see that they had proper curtains that were really beautiful and that looked luxurious. And through some other window, I could see beautiful furniture. What I was looking for was the health that comes in a functional family that lives in a home with good feng shui. So let me explain. When I was looking at all these mansions around me, I felt little. I felt like I was not good enough. And for a long time, I thought that maybe I was embarrassed that my parents didn't have as much money as the families around us had. And I felt embarrassed. I felt ashamed to think that I would be embarrassed, that I would think less of my family because we didn't have as much money as the people around us. But what I came to find out later on in life was that what I was embarrassed of, what I was ashamed of, was something really different. And so my parents built this house in the most expensive neighborhood. The house was a good size, but by no means a mansion. It was surrounded by mansions. But here's the thing that really embarrassed me, that the house was not finished properly. So because of financial restrictions, we had to move in the house before it was finished. And my father said we would wait until we had the money to finish the house properly, to get good material so that everything would look fine. But as time went on, that never happened. What actually happened was the house was finished poorly and incorrectly. So for example, when we moved into the house, the downstairs area, it was all open concept. Other than the front door and the back door, there were absolutely no doors. But on the second floor, with all the bedrooms, were 4 bedrooms and a bathroom, the doors were unfinished. They were wooden doors and they were unfinished, and you were supposed to varnish those doors. But instead of varnishing those doors, my father decided, he heard that you could use burnt motor oil to treat the wood on the doors, and that would protect the doors from moths. And that's what he did. He went to a mechanic shop and he asked if they would give him the burnt oil that they had taken from cars up when they were changing the oil. And he brought that home. And I had to take rags and with those rags smear this burnt motor oil on our doors inside and out to protect the doors. And so my hands stained of burnt motor oil for weeks. The smell stayed on the doors for years and they looked horrible. And now, because I know that petroleum is a dead material, it has no chi, it has no life, no energy. And because I do feng shui, I also know that when you burn that thing, it's even more devoid of energy. It's like a black hole, the opposite of something that has chi, good energy. And so these are the things that really embarrass me. And this, I'm just sharing with you one, right? And my father would have said at the time that he did that to save money, that we didn't have money for the varnish, so he had to use the motor oil in order to protect the door. But that's not the truth, because he chain smoked and he always had to have the best, most expensive cigarettes that were available. He went out to drink with his buddies at least once per week, and he went to places that were not cheap, and he would invite other people to drink. Sometimes he'd get excited and invite the whole bar. And so it wasn't a lack of money. He was cutting corners so that he could have the money to feed an unhealthy lifestyle, to feed vices. And so what really embarrassed me was the dysfunctionality that the bad feng shui in my parents' home showed, because it was a very dysfunctional family. So the thing that made me feel less than others was not that we were not as wealthy as the people who lived in mansions. It was these things that were done in the house that were so wrong. And once I understood that, I quit wishing to live in a mansion, because a mansion can be a dream home for a very small percentage of people, but for most people, it's not it. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. And I would like for you to share back with me and let me know, how do you feel about mansions? Have you cut out a picture of a mansion and put it on your vision board? Let me know and let's chat.